I'm going to talk about what are the layers, make an example of analysis of a game, and then how can they be used to make brainstorming, and some example of brainstorming that I did. So layers, it's a formal method. So a method that can be used for analysis. And they can be used also as a graphical representation. So because why it's important that it has to be graphical? Because if it's graphical, it's more easy to read and to share your results with other people. These are the 6 layers. This is a method that it was inspired by the MDA framework that Federico showed you Tuesday, and it's a mix from MDA, so the mechanics, dynamics, aesthetics model, and game design patterns, which is another kind of game design model analysis. I want to tell you this is only one of many kind of analysis of a game. This is one model. It's not the best. It's not the most useful. It's just one way to see the game. It's not supposed to describe the game completely. Just to see how the different parts of the game interact with each other. So these are the 6 layers. We can read. I'm going to show you to explain them from the bottom to the top. So input, token, verbs, goal, meta, and psychology. The input layer is contains everything you can use to interact with the game. So every interface that's between the player and the game. So it's the keyboard, the mouse, the touch screen, the camera of the phone, the microphone, the accelerator, all the things the game can use to know what the player wants to do. If you think a little bit about how input works, it's a very asynchronous model, because the game, like the modern FPS, like Call of Duty, the kind of games, gives a lot of information to the player. So you are inside a city, okay? You can know what are you working on, because you can hear the sound of your shoes. So you're working on rocks. You can know that a grenade just exploded next to you, because you feel the rumble of your joypad. So a lot of information is coming from the game to the player. But what the game knows about the player, it just what the player can do in the moment is just push a button. Okay, it's just an atomic single input. So there's a lot of contrast between what the game gives to the player, what the player gives to the game. It's a really really hard problem when you have to, for example, to deal with a difficulty dynamic adjusting difficulty, because you want to know if the player, how the player feels, if he's bored and he's just going to leave the game in a moment, or if he's compelled to play the game, he died while he wants to play game again. So the games really give a little small, the players give small information to the game. That's why also nowadays a route that, like for example, the next gen console are taking is the one of the camera. okay, like Xbox One, that Kinect, that can see a lot of more of what people, how people are playing the game. Just to have a lot more information about the state of the player. So why I'm telling you this? Because it's very important to design a good interaction, good layer of interaction from the game to the player. For example, I hate the virtual buttons on the touchscreen interface because they lack the feedback that real buttons give to the player. So I usually don't use them. You shouldn't. Anyway, here are some examples. The second layer is token. Tokens are all the graphical, all the elements inside the game that are functional to gameplay. So, for example, is the main character. There are the enemies, the power-ups, and obstacles, and the whole area of the game, the whole collidable area, and the goal, and all these kind of things. Well, that's it. The next layer is verbs. This is an old definition. Verbs are just the game mechanics. So how the player can interact with the game. It's a really important layer, and also because verbs can easily be adapted to work on other layers, as you will see later. And so example of verbs are to jump or to shoot or to throw things or to talk with the characters, that kind of things. The next layer is goal. The goal is what the player have to do inside the setting of the game, inside of the set of the game. For example, you have to Mario have to free the princess, or you have to kill all the enemies, or you have to escape from a situation, or you have to free all the play area in Tetris. There is the goal, what you have to do, and the motivation of the player inside the setting of the game. In contrast, we have the meta layer, which is what happens outside the layer of the game, outside the situation of the game. For example, when you have an high score table, for example, a shoot 'em up, and you have a high score table, and you probably play because you want to make the higher score on the table, okay? But that's not a goal inside the game, because inside the game you want to save the planet, you want to kill everyone to reach the final boss, and the high score is something that doesn't exist in the setting of the game, okay? This meta layer is quite important because describe a lot of things that are nowadays common in games, but it was like invented in the early days of the game development. For example, why exist levels in games? Why while today all the games have all the action games, adventure games have a large environment. You can travel, and these free roaming experiences that didn't exist when in the early days of video games. That's because of technical limitations. Because Mario Bros had like a certain a level of a certain length, but just because the memory cannot support level bigger than that. Okay. So levels is an invention due to technical limitation of video games. So there are lives. So lives and game over. The game over Why is the game over in video games? Someone knows why? Why the game over was invented? Because you had this arcade cabinet, okay? You put your money, you play, and in some ways you have to stop playing in some times because you have to put another coin inside. So that's why you have limited lives and you have game over. So that's why a lot of games today you can't die. You just can repeat the level anytime you want. And so the score table was invented because of the arcade cabinet. So when you design a game and you think, oh, I would like to put a score and would like to put lives in the game, just think about it. Do I really need these things, or are just things that came from the history of the games, but that made sense just like 20 years ago? Does it make sense today to have this element in my games? Another thing about this layer, okay. These are some elements of this layer. An early example of this layer is the score in Pong. It's like an overlay that doesn't. You can interact with the score, okay? Just something put over the gameplay. Another element important are the achievements. The achievements, because they're really important today, because in a lot of mobile games, they're used like a motivator to keep playing. The first game that started this was Jetpack Joyride. I maybe have a screenshot. Okay, this is quite a famous mobile game that uses achievement to motivate the player, because it's an infinite runner game, that kind of games, and you play always the same way. But you have like 3 missions, and it gives you you complete by playing in a certain way. For example, you have to not pick up coins for like 2 minutes. So it enforces the player to play in a certain way, okay? And this it works so well that a lot of games are just using this kind of motivation, like what's it called? Okay. Why this belongs to the meta layer? Because inside the setting of the game, you just want to reach the end, collect everything. So I'm now enforcing you to play in another way that is not coherent with the setting of the game. Okay. Do you have questions about it? About this? No. Okay. The last layer is psychology. Is every emotional response that you get in the game. It could be happiness, it could be tension, it could be boredom also, these kind of things. So I'm now showing you an example, so maybe it becomes more clear. The example is Pac-Man. You know Pac-Man, right? Yeah. Okay, this is an example of analysis. So let's start from the bottom and then go up. And the analysis is divided in 3 sectors. So let's start with the left sector. The input in Pac-Man is really simple. It is common to all the sectors. It's a 4-direction movement. It's simple, but everything can be analyzed a little bit deeper. For example, how you change directions with the angle, so you can analyze. So, for example, did you know that if you move in a corridor without pellets, without blank pellets, you move, your speed is higher, so you move faster than when you hit things. Did you know? So there are a lot of subtleties in this game it's not easy as it seems. Anyway, the main mechanic of the game is to collect things, okay? Collect the white pellets. The token related to this mechanic are the player collectibles, are the white pellets, white points. The goal related to this mechanic is to collect all. Why you have to collect all the pellets? Because you finish the level. So the meta level, the meta layer is related to levels. And why? Why would the player collect all the things? Because finish the level give you a sense of completion. Or accomplish something. Okay, I'm good. I'm good at the game. So if the game was only this part, it would be quite boring. Okay, just walk around and collect things, and just for one time, and then forget about the game. So what was added? Enemies were added to the game. So the token layer contains enemies. What's the verb? What's the mechanic related to enemies? What the player have to do? The player have to escape from the enemies. Okay? What's the goal of escaping the enemies? Is to survive. And what's the meta layer related to survive? What happens if you don't manage to escape from them? You die. So the meta layer leaves. Okay, that's it. What happens to the psychology? What happens when you are chased by a ghost of Pac-Man and they're really near to you and they're just like very concentrated? What happens? You have tension. Okay. When you build up this tension, you also need a way to slow it down, so to relieve from the tension. What's the way to relieve from this tension? It's the power pellet. It's the big one that makes you eat all the ghosts. Okay, so we have the power up that was added in the token layer, and when you eat this power up, the mechanics change, because from escape you start to chase the enemies. Why chase? Because there is another layer, another sector that I did not put here, because there is a score layer. Because if you eat all the ghosts in a row, you gain a lot of score. So there is a fourth sector that I didn't put here. So you see that the goal is to destroy, to eat all because of that. You see that a very simple game like Pac-Man can be can receive a good analysis like this. That's not all. Okay, that's not all the game. Questions? No. So after you realize that you can use to analyze the game, you see that you can also use this method to build up a game from scratch. So I made all these little words on some cards that you can buy, or can also download for free from the website, and you can just print and use them. And there is one word on each card. Okay, each color is one different layer, and you can build a game using these words. So you pick up a card, like by chance, and you put in the right order, and you just throw out ideas with friends, is better, and you came up with a new concept idea. These are the cards. They are divided, you see, most of them are of the verbs layer. But why you have so many cards in the verbs layer? Because verbs card can be easily adapted to work on any other layer. For example, I just make an example using the same word, and I apply it to every layer. Okay, the word is cry, to cry. For example, as an input, you have a Kinect. This is a Kinect. And as an input, the game asks you to fake to cry. So you have to move like you are crying, to shout, okay? That's a way of input the game could ask you. Or a verb can describe the characteristics, the attribute of a token. For example, we have a little girl which is crying. So it's only a way to describe an attribute. But if you put the same card in the verb layer, it becomes a game mechanic. So if you push a button, the little girl cries, and the water just fills this hole, and he can go to pick up his toy. Cry could be also the goal of the game. You are a male boy that have to go to steal the toy from the girl. So the goal is to make the little girl cry. Questo lo saltiamo. So what if the cry verb is used on a psychological level? Is the goal of a lot of greatest designers like David Cage is to make the player cry. This is an old image of the tech demo of PS3 before of a brain. It's like to change it. Anyway, it's not recognizable. Okay, so I show you an example. This is a photo made during a game jam. A game jam in Sweden, where you write all the words. People that take part of the jam write words on this little paper, and you pick up, and you have to make a game using that words. And I made this experiment using also my cards in top of the words that went out from the little papers. So I used them. I'm reading you what's written. This is dwarves, nani. Darkness. Magnification. We didn't use it. Money, levels, platform, then the frustration, yeah. Conquer, bounce, start. No, this is not bounce. So we use almost all of them. What went out from these words? There are dwarves. They are bouncing because they are on a pogo stick. They're bouncing on a pogo stick, and they have to collect money. So conquer the space of the game. What's the frustration? That's because there is this is a 4-player game. You play like 2 on a part, 2 on the other part, because it was a main cabinet, like a screen, flat screen, and you play 2 on the part, 2 on the other part. And you have to go. You can go on the other side of a screen, but when you go on the other side, you are like reflected, mirrored, and so you move in the opposite direction you think you're moving. So it's very difficult. So we came out from these ideas using the cards and using them as a constraint, because when you are on a brainstorming and you have to do something from scratch, constraints are really useful to force your ideas in a certain direction.